Have you ever walked into a room in your own house and felt like a stranger there? Not sad, not angry, just confused. Because the house is the same, the furniture is the same, the routines are the same. But something inside you quietly asks a question you weren't expecting. Is this still my life? I've been there. There were seasons when I kept looking for the next chapter and completely missed what God was doing in the one I was already living. And I want to tell you something today that I wish someone had told me years ago. But before I do, I need to warn you. Because what I'm about to share actually changed the way I see everything. And once you hear it, you won't be able to look at this season of your life the same way again. Stay with me. Now, most people assume that a quiet life is a shrinking life. And honestly, I used to believe that too. When the house gets bigger and the noise gets smaller, when the phone rings less, when the invitations stop coming as often, we start doing math in our heads, unconscious math. We start counting what we've lost instead of seeing what we're being given. But here's where I need to stop for a second. Because there's a man in the Bible who made that exact mistake. And he made it right after the greatest moment of his life. His name was Elijah. And what happened to him is something I think about often, especially when my own life gets quiet. Elijah had just called fire down from heaven. Think about that. Fire from heaven, in front of hundreds of people. It was one of the most dramatic miracles in all of Scripture. An undeniable, impossible, breathtaking moment. And then, almost immediately after, Elijah ran into the desert alone and asked God to let him die. Wait, what? The man who just witnessed fire fall from the sky was lying under a tree, convinced that his life was over. Convinced that he was completely alone. Convinced that he was the only faithful person left on earth. And I want to ask you something. Does that sound familiar? Not the fire from heaven part. The other part. The part where something inside you whispers that everyone has moved on without you. That the world keeps spinning but somehow left you behind. That maybe your best days are behind you. Elijah felt that after his greatest victory. Which tells me something important. The feeling that your life is shrinking is not always a sign that something is wrong with your life. Sometimes it's a sign that something is happening inside you. Here's what God did not say to Elijah. He didn't say, "You're wrong. Look how great your life is." He didn't give him a list of reasons to be grateful. He didn't remind him of the fire. He let him sleep.
He gave him bread. He gave him water. And then he gave him a question.
What are you doing here, Elijah? Not an accusation, a question. And I think God asks us the same thing sometimes. Not, "Why are you so ungrateful?" but, "What are you doing here? In this quiet place, in this slow season, in this house that feels too big. What are you doing here?" Because maybe, just maybe, you're not stuck here. Maybe you were sent here. Now I want to tell you about someone else, and this is the part I promised you earlier. This is the part that changes everything. His name was Moses. And before Moses became the man who stood before Pharaoh and parted the sea, he spent 40 years in the wilderness. 40 years. Not 40 days, not 40 weeks, 40 years. As a shepherd, in the desert, with no audience, no recognition, no indication whatsoever that anything important was happening.
If you had found Moses in year 37 of those 40 years and asked him what God was doing in his life, I suspect he would have looked at you with tired eyes and said, I honestly don't know. And that might be exactly where some of us are today. Year 37. We're not at the beginning, when everything still felt full of possibility. We're not at the end, when we can look back and understand. We're in the middle, in the quiet, in the ordinary. And it's hard to find meaning in the middle. But here is what I've learned, and this took me decades to truly believe. Seasons that look empty are not always empty. They just look that way from the outside. Underground, before anyone sees a single leaf, roots are growing. Deep, wide, strong roots that will hold everything else up later. Moses in the wilderness was not wasting time. He was growing roots. And perhaps you are too. Now, I said I'd share something that changes the way you see all of this. Here it is. The Bible never once calls Moses' 40 years in the wilderness a detour. That's our word. Detour, delay, wasted season. God never used that language. Because from God's perspective, those 40 years weren't a pause in Moses' story. They were the story. The preparation wasn't separate from the purpose. The preparation was the purpose. And I wonder if that's what some of us need to hear today. Because we live in a world that measures life by output. What did you produce today? How many people did you reach? What did you accomplish? And when the answers to those questions get smaller and quieter, we start to wonder if we are getting smaller and quieter too. But God doesn't measure life that way. God measures life by what is being formed in you, by what is being strengthened in you, by what is being clarified in you. And some of that work, the deepest work, can only happen in a quiet place. There's one more person I want you to think about. Joseph. Joseph spent years in situations he never would have chosen. A pit, a prison, a season of silence so long that it must have felt permanent. And yet, every single day he sat in that prison, God was positioning him for something that hadn't been revealed yet. Joseph couldn't see it. He was in year 37. But it was all connected. The pit led to the prison led to the palace, and the palace saved a nation. And none of it made sense until the end. Which means this: if you are in a quiet season and you can't yet see the connection, if you're in a house that feels too still, if you're in a chapter that feels unimportant, you may simply be inside a story that hasn't finished yet. I want to be honest with you for a moment. But before we continue, if these conversations help you see your life through a different perspective, I'd appreciate it if you'd take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every week, we explore life's hardest questions through faith, experience, and biblical wisdom. Now let's finish this thought. I'm not going to tell you that quiet seasons are easy. They're not. I'm not going to tell you that loneliness doesn't hurt. It does. And if you're struggling with depression or emotional pain that goes deeper than a quiet house, please talk to someone. Please don't walk through that alone. Because sometimes courage isn't waiting. Sometimes courage is reaching out. But for many of you, that's not quite what this is. What this is a season that feels different than you expected. Slower, smaller, less visible. And you've been wondering if that means less meaningful. I'm here to tell you, it doesn't. At 60 years old, I've met people who were busiest at 40 and emptiest at 60. And I've met people who discovered their deepest sense of purpose in a quiet house in their 60s. The difference wasn't their circumstances. The difference was the question they were asking. One group was asking, "Why is everything so quiet?" The other group was asking, "What is this season teaching me?" So let me ask you that question now. What is this season teaching you? Maybe it's teaching you that your identity was more tied to being needed than you realized. Maybe it's teaching you patience, real patience, the kind that only grows in slow seasons. Maybe it's teaching you how to be present, truly present, in a single day, a single hour, a single moment. Or maybe this season isn't about what it's teaching you at all. Maybe it's simply preparing you for something you cannot yet see. Like Moses in year 37. Like Joseph in the prison. Like Elijah under the tree. God was not absent in any of those moments. He was there, quietly, working in ways that wouldn't be visible until later. So if you find yourself in a house that feels too quiet, if your days feel repetitive and your phone rings a little less, if you've been secretly asking, "Is this it?" Here is my answer. No, I don't believe it is. Because being alone is not the same as being abandoned, and a quiet season is not the same as a forgotten one. Your purpose has not expired. Your story is not over. God has not looked away. Some of the most important chapters in life begin after we stop measuring life by noise. And maybe this quiet chapter, the one you're living right now, isn't the end of your story. Maybe it's just the part where God is writing something deeper. Before we go, I'd love to hear from you. Has your life become quieter over the years? And what has this season taught you that a busier season never could? Leave your answer in the comments. You never know who needs to read your words today. And remember, some seasons are loud, some are quiet, but God is present in both. So whatever season you're walking through, don't walk through it alone. Walk with God.